everybody who signed up gets 5 minutes. After 4 minutes, you'll hear this. And then when my phone chimes, don't give me the evil eye. I'm going to let it keep sounding until you get off the stage. All right. True story. So, starting us off is Daniel Davila. Daniel!
How do you like my attention-getting glasses?
No,
Elton Juan. No, Elton Juan. I normally read off of my. It's fine. Read off my phone. My phone died. It was in my car. I looked at my car. It was so hot. I went to T-Mobile and they told me that fried. So. We're in theme today.
Good.
So, let's see. Por tu sabor. Hay un sabor que insto a conocer, una urgencia estira tras estar cerca de ti, al ver la aroma de tus ojos, a oír la vista de tu voz. Al oler el sentido de tu aspiro, el deseo estar contigo. El deseo estar contigo, aunque tu corazón elige a otro. Mis labios tibios, mis labios, buscan tu calidez. Esta pobre lengua seca duele por saber tu sabor. There's a flavor. Flavor, one that I urge to know. This urgency, it stretches me. After being near you, to see the smell of your eyes. When hearing the sight of your voice. When I smell your sense of aspiration. To be with you along your heart. And although your heart chooses another, my warm, tepid lips, they seek your warmth, and this poor dry tongue, it hurts not knowing your taste. I'm just going through stuff that, since the phone's not here, stuff that's in here. Well, here's one in French, but I'm not going to read it in French. I'll read it in Spanish. I don't like my French accent. It sounds like Spanish. Me duermo adentro, mi propia tumba, durante del día despierta en el infierno, inferno. Mis noches son el cielo, cuando descanso. No llores cuando duermo, imagínate en mis sueños. And I wish the English could pay it justice. I fall asleep inside of my own tomb. During the day I wake up in hell. My nights, they're heavenly. When I rest with you. Don't cry when I sleep. Imagine yourself in my dreams. Hi. 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 Hey. Greetings to you all. I remember when I was a kid, I would walk home from school, and every morning and every evening I would walk past the house of this old man who sat in a wheelchair on his porch, and every morning and every evening we waved at each other. There were a lot of older people in my neighborhood working in their yards or just sitting on the porch who smiled and they waved. Some would say, tell your grandma hello for me. I was raised by my great-grandmother. Waving is something of the past now. But the waving was something I grew up with as a way to stay connected with friends. The wave is smiling with hands. The wave is looking into your eyes and saying, namaste. The wave says, I care about you. The wave says, I will not look the other way because I desire to stay connected with you. Salutations to the wave and greetings to you all. Okay, last couple. And let's call them Brian poems. Since I wrote this day after Brian, I don't know why it would have anything to do, but maybe it does. A revolving fan, a humble fan that blows soft winds left, right, left, right. Drying tears upon my face, left, right, left, right. This humble fan was meant to bring me comfort. It blows consistently, left, right, left, right. In air I desire upon my body, left, right, I pretend this gentle wind is your breath, whispering, you never left, right?
Donna, Dechen, Birdwell.
Yay!
Way high. Is it just
Paul, never put it down.
I'm sorry.
No one
Sorry.
ever put it down.
Damn, Paul!
Sorry.
Do you know how it works?
I can't do it.
I can't do it. I don't know how. Oh, that's good. That'll work right there. We can live with that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to personally invite all of you guys to come to my book launch party here at Malvern on July 20th, which is next month. It's a book that's totally unrelated to my previous 3 novels. This one is standalone, and I have read bits and pieces of it here in the past. So I feel like the book has a connection with this group. So you're invited. Please come. It's going to be fun. I enjoy, having good, familiar faces of people I care about in the audience when I do this thing. So, and now I just have a few words about our subtext of the day. Some people manage to pack so much living into life that when someone tells you they're gone, it's hard to believe. And then someone else tells you, yes, it's true. And you begin to get angry. They were too young to die. They weren't, as Arundhati Roy has put it, of a dieable age. I am of a dieable age, and I'm still here. It's not fair. I wrote this without knowing any of the details of how Brian died. I was thinking he wouldn't have gone willingly. He would have challenged death with a big old fuck you. Death came anyway, overwhelmed him, always does in the end. Maybe it was life that overwhelmed him. Maybe the crushing fucked upness of life was finally too much even for a warrior rebel like Brian. And when death finally tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Want to come over?" He just said, "Yeah, fuck it all, I'm done here." No matter. In the final analysis, it doesn't matter so much how death comes, because death is, after all, the final analysis. And in the final analysis, Brian Gross lived. And for those of us who knew him, he is not gone. We still hear the echo of his trenchant words and unmistakable laugh. Something happens and we remember a story he told us. We remember how unsparingly he shared his life with us, and our anger at his loss abates just a little bit in gratitude.
All right, the title of this is Something Grand. Moon and Sun were hanging out one day, talking about making something out of nothing. They'd been friends a long time, more like sisters really. And Sun enjoyed Moon's habit of inviting her to see a different perspective. Moon said, I think it's more creative to make something grand with grand ingredients. Boring ingredients lead to boring creations. Sun was inclined to agree, but didn't want to admit it. Where was the sport in both of them having the same point of view? Moon waxed enthusiastically. Look at all the bits of rock scraps left from when you made Earth. No sparkle, no light, boring. Moon then gleamed impishly. I challenge you. Use the things on Earth and make something grand. Well, it's a well-known fact that Sun made everything. She likes to say, I was feeling really creative, so I grabbed air, space, minerals, voila, a universe. So she started to work immediately at this. Now at this point, Earth was basically a brownish marble with a little bit of water, very smooth. She grabbed handfuls of dirt, piling, shaping into peaks and ridges, adding some clouds, a little snow. Well, Sun erupted into showers of fiery red lava. Moon said, mountains are nice, volcanoes are cool, but it's not grand enough. Then Sun guided rivers over mountains, creating waterfalls. Noisy, powerful rushes of spray. After that, she cast rainbows here and there. Moon nodded. That's a neat trick with the rainbows. Even better because you can't see it right away. Or at all, as she mused, when the colors disappeared. But still not grand enough. So next, Sun made giant creatures, elephants thundering around enormous palm trees, and whales leaping above the ocean. Moon raised her eyebrows. Is that it? I win! Not so fast. Sun scooped up a handful of rocks near a volcano, shaping them into small grayish buds with a red stripe on the back. Fireflies, she exclaimed triumphantly. Moon frowned, kind of puzzled. This? It's tiny, and it looks like a pebble. What does it do? It flies, Sun explained as the fireflies took flight. And it does this. At that moment, they began to glow. Moon gasped in surprise. Sun explained, the sparks from the volcano are inside them. During the day, they look boring, but at night, magic. Magic, Moon said. Now that's grand. Magic, Sun echoed. She beamed happily. I'm glad I get to follow that.
So this is thinking about heat, thinking about the summer. Many years ago, I took a month-long hike out west, and this is a story from one of those adventures. West Texas Lullaby. I arrived earlier than planned at Guadalupe Mountains, followed a winding road and set up my tent, pounded in stakes, rock against rock, hard and unyielding. I filled up my 2 water bottles and packed my pockets with trail mix, jerky, and a cheese stick. After orienting myself with the pocket map the ranger gave me, I directed myself to Guadalupe Peak trailhead. I subtly acknowledged a few fellow hikers milling about, some restless teenagers with their parents, a serious wilderness couple, and some runners. But they veered off to other trails before long, and I was alone with the heat, the stones, and the dirt. Just a few scurrying critters to keep me company, and the majestic yucca cutting slices into the sky. So I greeted the tiny cactus blooms, crouching down low to get a magnified look at their tissue paper petals surrounded by sharp thorns. I marveled at their uniqueness, their resilience, the audacity of their delicate beauty. I busied myself trying to capture the stark shadows and intense color with my camera. But as I wound around and up the mountain, I became more obsessed with the seemingly endless zigzag of the path and its teasing, meandering. The details faded, and I got lost in the endless horizon stretching impossibly in the distance. I played a game with myself, trying to guess which way the trail would turn next and how far until I finally reached the top. But I was repeatedly humbled by my inability to predict its mysterious pattern. And each summit was but a mere stepping stone for the next. Several hours in, my heart leapt at the sound of voices coming towards me. But when they appeared, I saw it was a huddle of experienced adventurers with their firm muscles, sun leather skin, and scuffed hiking boots. I found myself too intimidated to interrupt their heated conversation with more than a nod, as I feigned confidence and plunged determinedly ahead. But as the sun blazed overhead and the water sloshed light in my last bottle, I began kicking myself for the impertinence of my ego. Why didn't I at least ask how much farther to the top? My calves burned with each incline, and my mouth was cotton, as repeated admonishments about hiking alone ran on loop in my brain. Sweat slipped down, and my shirt plastered itself to my skin, thin and drenched. Blisters rubbed raw against my boots like pebbles. So I sang softly to reassure myself and lose my damning thoughts in the mesmerizing switchbacks stitching up the mountain. When I finally snapped out of my daze, I saw an arrow pointing to the summit and broke into an awkward lope. Standing finally at the top with the wilderness unfolding as if I were stepping into a painting, I felt a rush well worth the climb. All the insecurity and doubt drained out of me as I huddled in the sliver of shade provided by a small metal monument, proudly declaring tallest peak in Texas. It was then that I saw it, a flash of light in my periphery out west. I turned and saw the thunderstorm threatening off in the horizon. Heavy and ominous, jagged bolts of lightning ripping through the darkened sky. And just as it registered that there was not a worse place in Texas to be at that very moment, my feet were already up and carrying me by leaps and bounds down the steep slope I had so recently trudged cautiously up. My body mutinied against my more methodical mind and took over. I could hear the crunch of pebbles under my boots, slipped and found myself sliding down rocky turns on my ass, skidding with scraped palms splayed to slow the fall, the sky inky gray like a fabric hastily thrown over a lampshade. Colors hushed and the breeze suddenly moist sifting through my salty hair. My lungs were burning, but I could not stop. Though my legs trembled with the impact of each pounding step, I was lost in the momentum. Before I knew it, I was rounding the last turn and saw the landscape roll out before me like a carpet, my campsite at last in view in the distance. My strides lengthened into a sprint, leaping clumps of grass and stones as hail the size of golf balls bounced absurdly off my head. Laughing hysterically, tears streaming down my face, I at last dove headfirst into my tent and sprawled spread eagle across the bottom as jagged stones jabbed into my back. Just a thin fabric separated me from the world outside. But as the wind rocked me to and fro, as I surrendered my life to the night, I swayed to my own West Texas lullaby.
Ursula Pike. This is from an essay called The Cleanest Piggly Wiggly in Mississippi.
I love it.
The Cleanest Piggly Wiggly in Mississippi.
Oh.
But This is about another Piggly Wiggly, this excerpt. So, I was 34 years old the first time I walked through the glass doors of a Piggly Wiggly grocery store. Those iconic stores with adorable giant pink pig heads looming over them were unknown on the West Coast where I grew up. My boyfriend and I lived near Union, Mississippi, population 2,000, which had 2 grocery stores. The Pig was the nicer of the 2. That first time we shopped at Piggly Wiggly, my boyfriend and I were giggly and in love. He scratched his red beard, and I smirked at the buckets of chitterlings and pickled pork brains and gravy. Piggly Wiggly, we said with as much of a southern accent as our northern mouths could muster. The aisles were heavy with products, and it was nearly impossible to get our buggy from one end of the store to the other. And we loved that they called the shopping cart a buggy. The produce section was limp and small, but had basics. The few loaves of wheat bread were gone early in the week, leaving me to choose between 5 different types of white bread. The shelves were stacked almost to the top of the ceiling with as much product as they could fit. A blonde woman with a bouffant that looked like a wig I once wore to a party was pretending to examine a bottle of pickles while checking me out. Everyone knew everyone else in this small town. New people rarely moved to Union. I'm sure they were curious about who I was, but no one ever said a word to me. The only person I spoke to was the young man who bagged my groceries and carried them to the car without asking if I needed help. The smell in that store was not far from the musty smell I remembered from the natural grocery stores in Oregon my mom took me to, with an added hint of raw pork and cheap dog food. It was tolerable, at least until I found myself unexpectedly pregnant and suffering from extreme morning sickness. I became a mouth-breathing grocery shopper. A mouth-breathing, unwed, pregnant grocery shopper with no health insurance and little money. Luckily, the Mississippi Band of the Choctaw Indians came to my rescue because they allowed members of other tribes to use their services. The Choctaws set me up with prenatal vitamins, regular visits to a native doctor, an infant car seat, and WIC coupons. Women, infants, and children. It's a food assistance program. Only certain stores accept WIC coupons. In Union, Mississippi, the Piggly Wiggly was not one of those stores. Instead, I had to shop at the other store where almost expired cans of juice sat next to sugar cereal. I tried to be cheery when checking out, chatting at the clerk ringing me up. Then I pulled my WIC coupons out. She sighed as she saw them. She was now the enforcer. Her job was to compare my groceries to the list of allowable WIC items taped to the wall. Cheerios were okay, but cinnamon Cheerios weren't. I was nervous, and the way she scrunched up her forehead and didn't seem to be breathing made me think she was too. I had been a champion rule follower since I was a child, learning early to color within the lines. I didn't want her to think I would choose a wrong item. I didn't want her to tell her friends, this woman came in today and I couldn't believe it, tried to buy some cranberry juice instead of grape juice with her welfare. Then she smiled slightly and rolled her eyes. In that moment, it was clear that we were simply 2 women without resources, being forced to act out a play about charity and responsibility with a script written by a man in a Capitol building somewhere who probably had never gone grocery shopping in his life. WIC relied on clerks like her who probably earned just enough not to qualify for assistance to police the purchases of people like me. Every year the list changed as policymakers in DC found new things they believed poor people should not be allowed to consume. Truthfully, I was embarrassed about having to use WIC. The embarrassment came from thinking I never would have ended up here, poor again. I didn't have much money when I was little and have great stories about stealing Hostess snowballs from the convenience store because my mom never had money for sweets. But once I went to college, that was supposed to be the end of the poverty stories.
No one in my family had graduated from college, but everyone believed it was the key to a steady, secure future. I believed I would go to college, get a good paying job, and never be poor again. That my life was one upward trajectory arrow heading towards the sky. That's not what happened. Thank you.
Shine is filming stuff.
Uh-huh.
There we go.
Asshole chime.
Exactly. RG Hook.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a piece that I wrote about Brian, I think like the day after, and but first, the first thing I did was look to see what Thom had on his page, because I couldn't understand why everyone was referring to him in the past tense. And then I sent a note to Hope, and then I sent an email to Teresa, and I still, even for 24 to 48 hours later, couldn't quite grasp that he was actually dead. So you'd never have guessed from one look at his tattooed torso that he was a Vassar graduate, nor from the leather pants or the chains hanging off him that he was an Eagle Scout. And you definitely would have assumed he was a biker babe high on a Harley, when in reality he drove a school bus yellow Rubicon. Nothing of Brian's externals would have prepared you for his internal gift as a creative writer of haikus, spoken word, and comical essays. Potty mouth? Yes. Gruff? Yeah. F-bomb galore? Yep. This gentle giant of 6 feet, usually on the edge of laughter, sometimes anger, all of it drilling deep inside him, was just another grown-ass boy sharing his mind in his world through writing. You will forever be missed. And this is Haiku 6 from his book, Squalor. It's a book of poetry. All right, Chinosky, you have had enough to drink. Go home and write it. Pumpkin spice season, celebrated by white folks. Is it over yet? Psychosis is real, but it is the people that don't hear the voices. So, after sort of, kind of embracing that he was gone, it made me kind of go back and look at some of my older poetry, things that I hadn't read out loud in like more than a couple decades. So I started revisiting some of that. So I'm going to share 3 of those with you. They're all about leaving. This was someone that I would eventually become engaged to and then eventually choose not to marry. It's called To Share With You. I could share with you all those secrets I keep hidden away, some which few humans have ever heard. Or I can continue to guard my haven of old hurts. What are the rules? I do wish someone would tell me. To not share is a clear path of misconception of predictable failure, and my core fully realizes the implications. But again, please tell me how to let go. What dusty packages do I open? Really, how do I determine the worthy one of such rare trust? And who should begin the slow obliteration of walls constructed over time, bricks layered one on top of the other, the experience of not sharing with anyone, with you? Here it is then, that sensitive part of my heart, my soul, the piece that describes and explains and protects who I am before you and who I could be with you. The next one is, it's called Belize, because I spent a summer, a volcanic summer, doing online dating. This was like 15 years ago. And I would give them little names based on little things that they told me. And so this was a gentleman who was building a house in Belize, so I called it Mr. Belize. He cannot be captured nor put in a cage, nor restrained at any time. Like a panther who lies in wait, he is untamable. At 6'2", he towers a petite frame. Enormous hands envelope my own. Why in this lifetime have our paths crossed? For what purpose? I can name his kindness, his manner from only one meeting. Lifelong dreams shared over a week. Where he's been and where he's headed. Who he believes he is today. From 1 month together, I can list the promises he made to himself. But what I cannot tell you is why he's on the moon. what really motivates his actions. I have small clues about what makes him panic and run, disappearing without a trace, yet responding just as quickly. He grabs for the rope I toss, climbing back to possibilities, then vanishing again. What I cannot see, what I am hopelessly blind to, leaves me confused and hurt. He retreats, yet his greatest longing is to be with. I see this in him. I see it in myself. I see that I can mend neither. But that does not stop the senseless questions, linger or let go. What good can come of this? Another sleepless night reveals my innermost fear. You cannot rely on him. No sanctuary can be found with this man. Yet my head whispers, makes public my desire. Where are you now? Thank you.
Richard Allen White.
Hey, Richard.
Hi, I'm Richard Allen White. I have to leave right after this to go drink the blood of God himself. So my first poem is called Edge Reversed. The woman is still smiling, like a frozen smile on the black and white film noir femme fatale photography on the memorial of her cenotaph. Her breathless, grinning death seems to say, reading all those autopsy poems of Sylvia Plath made the ill an illusion and gave her chilly artistry its forensic Greek necessity. No light of moons, no more nights we tried to die. This is the edge of her body of work. A breathless rictus, bloody, marked tooth smile, a coldness wrapped in a blue blanket. Bodiless doom of mood and disarticulated thought hold her face down to drown in the sea of worlds. And my Brian poem. Brian Gross, rest in peace, June 9th, 2019. I thought of him when I used Mitchum, which was often. Brian celebrated Robert Mitchum's 100th birthday. Undomesticatable is everyone in his own way. Poetry after the A-bomb. I live in fear. Brian wrote a book and called it Squalor. I read it all back there. I rolled on Mitchum's bottom shelf deodorant and thought of Brian, Robert, and the Night of the Hunter, the noir in which character-disordered Mitchum played and had love and fear tattooed on the knuckles of each hand. Fallen heroes feed the honor lawn. Tattooed poets rise as lords of the cannibal dawn. Out of mazes, monsters, and dirt-cheap hookers, Mitchum's men fall under the pen of those who know. Brian Gross was a watcher of them. Happy birthday, Robert Mitchum. Happy death day, Brian Gross. Mitchum rolls on. I thought of him often when I was naked in fear, rolling on in the morning.
You know why I'm not using music this time again, but it's not your fault. I'm just using my tool as always, but in a different way. This poem is about a painting, well, not a painting, a photograph we used in one challenge we had last time in a different group. And I named this one as Monochrome Limbo. I feel you, my love. The touch of your hands, so hurt and soft against mine. Can see your divine face, no matter how hard I try.
My eyes are closed, no case. Even when I heard you cry. Can't say anything to you laying on this bed. You don't want to move while the cloth sticks away. Can't walk or touch your lips connected to this machine. Half awake, half asleep. Fading reality in between. Doctors say it won't wake up. Nurses come and complain. Relatives say, don't give up. There must be another way. I barely listen and feel with this damaged certain mind, no expression very, very still. In this bruised body confined. I'm here frustrated while trapped in a loop of dream. Same bridge broken and dated. Nobody can hear me scream. All the echoes in the air, from the fully alive out there. Nobody will be aware of my suffering nowhere. Absent tree on my left, as my own freedom. They treat me like I'm deaf, some blind unto God's wisdom. We'll be here forever, stuck in black and white, creeping under the weather, caused by your whitest lie. A lie that makes me stay in this lonely sight, based on your stubborn faith that I will be living a normal life. All I can clearly see is this wooden unstable bridge, crumble under my feet, but never the end will be reached. That bridge is my body, fractured in a pitiful way, will decompose slowly and badly, while you watch me slipping away. The remaining tree is my spirit, complete in pain. Please let me go to the infinite, where my soul won't be chained. This is more like traditional. It's a hot summer day in 1950, somewhere in the desert in Mexico, dusty like a monochrome photograph on an old forgotten shelf. Here he comes, the General Zapata in Spanish, so infinite, with that bushy mustache and a sigh full of pride. The son on his boot introduced him to the coffee place, semi-empty, more like a furtive bar than a coffee shop. The bartender rushed to let Zapata and his troop get into the place. Very ghostly, mystery. Making a reverence, come on, get in. With fear and respect at the same time. God. Well, the lamps flickers a bit, adding to the atmosphere, the mystery of it. Covered in random shadows inside, and the smell of coffee and alcohol, the bottles of tequila just right away on the shelves welcome the general and the troops, with no intentions to be fooled anymore. Esta maldita guerra terminará hasta que me tome una botella de aguardiente como esta con mis enemigos. Salud. Thank you.
Last but not least, Thom.
I've been to 3 memorials or remembrance readings for Brian, and all of them were different, with different people, spoken and heard, half-price books and here. And there's another one on Thursday, 13th, 6:30 to 9 at the Grackle, and it's the Austin Hair and Facial Club people, which is a totally different demographic, which shows that, and when I try to speak about him, those that don't know him say, plant a flower and move on, Thom, move on. So this is my response to our inability to move on. Brian was living life large, dancing our skeleton words, left as dust to conjure up his dream. But dust cannot dance without wild winds to conjure it, and words alone are a script that requires your energetic interaction. Adaptation allows poem to make play make verse, make visual, having to substitute for personal. Up close, we have pimples and mistakes. Over death's dull distance, we illumine and stand out and shine. False narrative. Consider Anne Frank, Queen Elizabeth I, cutting history with lead-based face paints, powder and shine. Official portraits seduce and flatter. Emperors always say, "Oh, do I look good in this?" Pussy Riot knows. Girl power entrances by aloofness and distance. Up close is magnetic. Dance, movement, retro literary autopsies cannot sparkle and shine. You've got to be alive in your own time. Brian, your life can be a page of an unwritten novel, a chapter of an unread biography, a rocky coastline with many reefs, a rainforest with tall green waves, a hill wanting to be a mountain, a door wanting a new hinge, a rusted tractor, a dog with no owner, a way that you ignore, another you chose, regrets and teardrops, stained, restrained memoirs. Here is where you were when you first began to question. Here is also where you were when you stopped for directions. Here is where you ended up after so many ambient landscapes. Here is where you will be when you slice your life into visible ghost segments and seek to sell them posthumously in some marketplace of meaning. This last is for the master of us all, silence and solitude. I do not come from silence. I will not go quietly. I meditate daily. This is as close as I can get to the Zen. Others make altars of others and bow down. I rise up when I hear speech sing to me. The ring of truth in sound and vision thrills. And I am not the only one who feels this way. Others join the contemplative way. They pray to whatever God will answer. And if none does, they will still pray. This is the silence, they say, sings to them. A voice petitioning all heavens. And it will rain again.
Thanks to everybody who participated, especially sharing your Brian stories, and of course our audience actively listening. Please join us for our next roulette, which is going to be August 11th. The theme is Too Woke Insomnia. Don't know about you, if overly PC just prevents you from sleeping. You want to hear